Chapter 1 Pass-Through. You are listening at FameTV.info. Chapter 1 Crossing. Lee Si-wen was woken up by a burst of crying. She scratched her head in annoyance, cried out loudly, opened her eyes reluctantly, and then she was dumbfounded. Fuck you, have you been kidnapped? This is a place where birds don /t shit. The walls are made of luss. There is a table next to the bed. The table is very crude. A white enamel cup is placed on the table. Half of it was missing, and a few small boards were stuffed to cushion it. Lee Si-wen lifted the quilt and was shocked when she saw the quilt. The quilt was even more outrageous. It was all white and rotten with a few small holes. The quilt had more than a dozen patches of various sizes, and it felt a little hard. It should be at /s been covered for a long time. Looking at the shoes and the army green canvas bag hanging on the wall, Lee Si-wen knew that this was the 1970s and 1980s in her novels, even if she had never experienced it before. Mrs. Lee outside the door heard the movement in the room, and stopped crying and howling, and hit her son next to her angrily. Shut up. Lee Lao-san touched his head, but he didn't /t speak. The whole time his mother was crying, the sound was deafening, but he nodded obediently. The third child, is there any sound in the room? Old Man Lee also came back and asked the third son who was beside him. It seems that there is. Lee Lao-san said suspiciously, and then Ishii rushed into the room. Si-wen, you /re all right, do you know that you /re going to scare me to death, my dear Si-wen, let Dad see if you /re okay. Lee Lao-san was overjoyed when she saw that she was all right, and went up to touch her quickly. The girl /s head is no longer hot. Lee Si-wen saw that a group of people had a headache, and a wave of memories flooded into her mind immediately. Only then did she know that she was dressed in the 1980s when she could not get enough food and clothing. The original name of is also Lee Si-wen. She is 18 years old this year. Rural girls get married early, usually at the age of 17 or 18. Lee Si-wen /s grandparents are also discussing her marriage recently. The marriage was decided from a young age. Now the man is 20.1 years old and the woman is 18. The two men who have negotiated well are going to break off the marriage. It was said that it was an arranged marriage, and that there was no relationship. Breaking off the marriage had a great impact on the reputation of the woman. When she went out just once, she saw the man with a little girl. The original body couldn't /t stand the blow immediately, and he jumped into the river when he couldn't /t think of it. Fortunately, the man is a sensible person. Seeing her jumping into the river and ignoring the obstacles of the woman beside him, the original body was rescued. It was spring, but the weather was a little cold, and the original owner was still fluttering in the river to prevent them from being rescued, so the two of them stayed in the river for a long time, and they developed a high fever after they went ashore. Luckily, Lee Si-wen crossed over after him. Mrs. Lee looked at her granddaughter in a daze, and she felt a chill in her heart. Could it be that she was stupid? This is not good. How could such a smart granddaughter of her own be so stupid? Si-wen, do you know who I am? Milk, you are my grandma, what /s the matter? Lee Si-wen approached and said while looking at the family. The one closest to him is Lee Si-wen /s grandmother, the head of the family. Of course, the last one is the second head of the family. Old Man Lee is also Lee Si-wen /s grandfather. Old Man Lee was standing at the back at the moment, but he was not worried at all. Although Lee Si-wen /s father was the third child, Lee Si-wen was the eldest among his grandchildren. Lee /s family is not doing well. All the nearby villages know that Lee /s family is poor, and no girl is willing to marry in. Therefore, it is very difficult for the sons of the Lee family to marry a daughter. In law. But Lee Lao-san is different. Lee Lao-san is good-looking and glib. He falls in love with Lee Si-wen /s mother Yuying freely. Therefore, Lee Si-wen is the first child of her grandchildren. The two elders of the Li family do not prioritize sons over daughters, and they dote on the first grandchild of their favorite son. Another reason is that this girl Li Siwen is very capable. This girl has a lot of strength since she was young. She can lift a cow with her bare hands, and she is a leader in work. Because of this girl/'s great strength, the old man Li/'s family can be described as a mixed bag in the village. No one dared to bully her, even if anyone was unconvinced, they had to weigh Li Siwen/'s great strength. Siwen, it/'s fine if you/re fine. Do you know that you/re going to frighten your mother to death? I/am just a caring granddaughter like you. If something happens to you, I won/t live. Madame Li said, wiping the corners of her eyes. Tears, she is really uncomfortable. This girl likes to follow her since she was a child, and the relationship between the two is also deep and tight. This girl was in a coma for a day and a night. She went to the doctor and they said it was fine, but she was still awake and turned her around in a hurry. Li Siwen saw the sincerity of the people in front of her, and her heart suddenly warmed. Her parents divorced since she was a child. Because she was a girl, her grandparents preferred sons to daughters, and she was not close to herself. Her parents also had their own families. She was like an orphan who was kicked over and over. She could see that the few people in front of her cared deeply about her. Grandma, I/am fine, you see I/am not fine now. Li Siwen helped Mrs. Li to the table next to her, pulled out a stool and helped her sit down. Old man Li stood by and lit a cigarette. He just took a puff and quickly put it out. The granddaughter was still not feeling well, and the smell of cigarettes would definitely be uncomfortable. Siwen, let me tell you, that boy from the Shao family is not a good one. He will pull him down if he doesn't/t want to. Grandpa will find you a better one. That/s right, it/s his loss for that kid to lose our Siwen. My daughter is so good, the man who will marry in the future will definitely be 100 times stronger than him. Li Xingwen said on the side, waiting for himself to find a chance teach this kid a good lesson. Li Siwen nodded. She was not familiar with the Shao family, let alone the fiancé. It would be even better to break up the engagement. She wanted to have a sweet relationship, not to arrange a marriage as soon as they came up. Marry. Grandma, since Big Brother Shao wants to break off the marriage, let/s break it, but it/s not him, but our family to find them. In this era, if a woman breaks off the marriage, it will have a great impact, let alone the husband's breakup of the marriage. If she wants to retire by herself, she can save a little bit of reputation. Mrs. Li looked at her granddaughter suspiciously. She was enlightened once she died, didn't/t this girl refused to agree with her before. Until she bumped into the Shao family boy and other women in a private meeting, she jumped into the river without thinking. I just woke up and agreed to break off the marriage. I just wanted to understand it, or I was holding it back in my heart. Really, Siwen, if you really can/t let that kid go, I/ll tell his mother, I don't/t believe that their family can ruin this engagement. This engagement was made when Mr. Shao was here, and it can/t be Shao. The old man just left for a few years and they refuse to admit it. Damn, I let it go, the twisted melon is not sweet, even if I do marry him, it will be me who will suffer in the future. It is better to end it early. I want to understand, I want to find someone who really likes me, like this he will treat me well. Li Siwen squatted beside Mrs. Li and said seriously with her head on her lap. Okay, if you want to understand it, I will go to Shao/s house with your grandfather at noon and cancel the marriage. After Mrs. Li said, she glanced at her granddaughter again, and seeing that she was not at all uncomfortable, she immediately, I was very relieved, and I began to urgently want to get rid of the marriage, thinking of what the Shao family looked like when she broke off the marriage. She was so angry that her granddaughter liked this kid, and she didn't/t dare to say it too badly, because she was afraid that her granddaughter would be embarrassed by him. Then it will be her turn to humiliate that kid. End of this chapter. Listen to the full novel at FameTV.info, direct link in the description.